Hey everyone, Jake here from CVP. Today we are taking a look at Blackmagic's long-awaited first full-frame cinema camera. This is the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K. We had the Cinema Camera 6K for about a week to run through its paces, and we've tried to shoot as much controlled examples as well as more real-world creative footage in that time alongside our other projects as we can. This included filming with the brilliant Laura at Emporium Tattoo Studio, as well as some other general footage out and about. The image out of this camera looks very impressive considering its price, and shooting in B-RAW means you can really dial in how you want your footage to look. Blackmagic has a bunch of fantastic looking images on their website that have been shot by some extremely talented people, so if you want to see for yourself exactly what this camera can do, I've put a link to download these clips in the description below. Anyway, let us know what you think of the image down in the comments below. Now let's talk about the technical details of the camera, starting off with the sensor and how it performs. By far the star of the new 6K has to be the new full frame sensor housed inside it. It is a pretty conventionally sized 36 by 24mm full frame sensor with a resolution of 6048 by 4032 with a pixel pitch of 5.95 microns. The sensor is rated to capture up to 13 stops of dynamic range at both of its native ISOs, the low being 400 and the high being 3200. This is how the dynamic range is mapped across these different ISOs. You can actually record the full 3:2 aspect ratio of the sensor, which is really useful. In our modern video and cinema working world, shooting for more than one deliverable format is really common, and 3:2 can be really helpful for this, thanks to the extra height that it has over 16:9. Pair that with some of the overlays you can use in the camera, and you'll be able to frame while considering both 16:9 and 9:16, which is a common combination. This isn't the first camera on the market to offer this, but it's certainly more of a luxury at this price. If you did, however, want to shoot in a portrait orientation instead, the camera's UI will rotate when the camera is rotated. The orientation is also recorded in metadata, so you don't need to rotate your footage in post, which is handy. The 6K behaves very similarly to the rest of Blackmagic's cameras when it comes to recording in higher frame rates. As you window in on the sensor, you can shoot higher and higher frame rates. In the camera's maximum open gate 6K 3:2 mode, you can go up to 36 frames per second. In 6K 17:9, you can go up to 48 frames per second. In 4K 17:9, you can go up to 60 frames per second. And then you can go up to 120 frames per second in Full HD, which has quite a significant crop. From our testing, the footage looks really good. Even the HD 120 looks incredibly detailed and clean. It's not got the highest frame rates possible, which is a bit of a shame. I just wish it could capture a little bit more, especially considering how good it looks. But I'm sure Blackmagic have squeezed as much as possible out of this camera. The Cinema 6K features an OLPF, also known as an anti-aliasing filter. OLPFs are used a lot on high-end cinema cameras to counter moire. So if we take a look at our focus chart, we can see that there actually is some slight aliasing, but not much. You shouldn't run into too much of this in the real world though, as this is a pretty extreme example. The footage is incredibly detailed. It has a bit more of a well-rounded sharpness to it rather than it looking too digital. It looks nice. The Cinema 6K features Blackmagic's Generation 5 colour science, which is a big step up over Generation 4. The Cinema 6K has been designed to look closer to the 12K than Blackmagic's other cameras, and it does capture colours very nicely. For these examples, we transformed the colour space and gamma to Arri's latest Log C4 and White Gamut 4, and then used Arri's own LUTs, and I think the image looks great using this method. You can manipulate it really easily in Resolve or Premiere, but this is the method that we like the look of the most. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, and if you want to buy anything you see in this video, or any other filmmaking or photography gear, head over to cvp.com where our experienced team is waiting to help you. As I said earlier, the Cinema Camera 6K has a dual native ISO of 400 and 3200. It's really helpful to get those extra stops of sensitivity for when you need to in lower lighting scenarios. But this camera certainly isn't a no light camera like some others on the market now. You will need to light it in very dark scenes. You can't control the amount of noise reduction in camera either, so you may need to do some noise reduction in post, which, with the included Resolve Studio, is relatively easy to do. If you run into any issues such as hot or stuck pixels, you can easily run what Blackmagic call a pixel recalibration. Just make sure to chuck your body cap on when you want to do this so no light can get onto your sensor. This process takes roughly 33 seconds, which is pretty fast and worth doing from time to time. Blackmagic always does a great job of releasing readout speeds for their cameras when they launch over on their forum, link to which is in the description below. Unfortunately, the 6K in its full 3x2 sensor mode has a speed of 25 milliseconds, which is quite substantial and will result in some pretty obvious rolling shutter artifacts. Readout speed will improve though as you reduce your resolution. It's similar in performance to the S5 II for example, but it certainly won't hold a candle to the likes of the A7S III or FX3 speed. One thing that I didn't know is that you can use the gyroscopic metadata that the Cinema 6K can capture in camera, or any other Blackmagic camera that can capture gyro data, in Resolve to not only stabilise your footage fast, but also somewhat correct rolling shutter. I had no idea about this until I stumbled across this video from Diode Films on YouTube, which is crazy as this is an awesome feature. To do this, all you need to do is get your clips into a Resolve project, go into Colour, then Tracker, then Stabiliser here. You then need to select Camera Gyro on the drop down menu here. Set your strength to 0 and hit Stabilise. It's very quick to apply this effect, and now that it's done we can see just how large of a difference this makes. It's not perfect, but it's so much better than it was. And with the auto zoom toggled off, we can see just how much slant is being corrected here. This will crop into your image, but given that we are recording in 6K, it may be worth the trade-off for some shots to have this level of correction. This would be really helpful for many people who are shooting more run and gun or fast-paced styles of work with these cameras. It really can help with rolling shutter performance, which is one of the main drawbacks of the Blackmagic systems. For the best results, I suggest recording your lens metadata in camera, which you will have to do manually with dumb lenses. With lenses that can communicate with your camera, the camera will automatically record this data for you. However, I did do a test with and without this dialed in camera, and can't really tell the difference between the two clips, but I would definitely suggest doing it if you can. You can of course also use this gyro data to stabilise your footage, and Resolve does a really good job of this as well. Unlike the 6K Pro, the Cinema 6K does not have an internal ND filter system. This is a bit of a shame, but I understand why Blackmagic would have omitted this due to the newer, shallower flange of L-mount and the OLPF inside. Fingers crossed we see a Blackmagic camera in the future that uses L-mount, is full frame, and has an ND system built in. Sony has shown with their systems it is possible, so fingers crossed other camera brands can follow suit. One thing to consider though is, with how simple the autofocus in this camera is, I think adapting from L-mount to something like EF or PL and then using a rear filter ND adapter is probably the way that a lot of people will go. Mica currently make PL variants of their drop-in filter system for L-mount, which I think could be a really good solution for this camera. I also think that Nisi's upcoming L-mount versions of their Athena cinema lenses will be a very good combination with this camera, as they also feature a rear filter system and an excellent value for money. If you haven't seen our review on those, I really recommend you check it out. In the past, Blackmagic cameras have suffered from IR pollution pretty bad, so I wanted to see how the 6K performed in this regard as well. With NDs on and off, the camera does a great job at cutting infrared light. This will most likely be thanks to the OLPF having some kind of IR cut built in. As you can see from our examples, the large range of black fabric doesn't shift red or pink at all. They are still very neutral, which is great to see. For our Latitude tests, we grabbed the new 6K as well as the Pocket 6K G2, Panasonic S5 IIX and Sony FX3, as well as EF adapters for them all, and then our trusty Zeiss Otus 55mm. Here's a breakdown of our methodology for these tests. Right, let's take a look at the results. When it comes to overexposure, we can see that the Cinema 6K performs well until around 4 stops over, where we can start to see clipping on Sam's skin. For the two Blackmagic cameras, we shot B-RAW and we are using highlight recovery, which does help bring back some information in our highlights. Whether you prefer the look of this or not is up to you. At 4 2/3, we can see blue on our chart starting to clip and magenta clipping at around 5 stops. The Pocket 6K performs very similarly to the Cinema 6K, with 4 stops being where it begins to break. The S5 IIX looks pretty similar to the Cinema 6K with highlight recovery off, but with this on, the Cinema 6K does perform better here. The A7S III performs very closely to the Cinema 6K as well with the highlight recovery off, and it does come very close to it with it on as well, but the Cinema 6K does look a touch better at 4 stops. I know that we could have shot external RAW on the S5 IIX and A7S III, but we didn't have a recorder when we shot these, so we couldn't unfortunately. Looking at underexposure, the Cinema 6K performs well down to 3 stops under. At 4, we can start to see some CMOS smearing and lots of noise, though this is true for each camera at 4 stops. Colour is still held well, and so is detail. 6 is definitely unusable of course, but that's not too surprising. The 6K G2 performs slightly worse, with a far more purple shift to it. The A7S III's noise looks bigger, but I think it holds Sam's skin a touch better here. The S5 IIX probably performs the worst out of the bunch, shifting more green than purple and having some of the more aggressive CMOS smear. We also captured 6 stops at each camera's high native ISO. This was 3200 for the Blackmagic cameras, 6400 for the S5 IIX, and 12800 for the A7S III. Here you can see where the A7S III sensor really separates itself from the rest of the pack. Considering how little light is hitting the sensor, the image is insanely clean. It looks a little bit less detailed and noisier than the 800 ISO clip, but it's incredibly close. And compared to the rest of the pack, it looks leagues apart. I would say the S5 IIX though looks the second best, followed up by the Blackmagic cameras. One of the biggest changes that the new 6K has is the lens mount that it uses. The 6K uses Leica's L mount in favour of something like EF, which has been on plenty of previous Blackmagic cameras. This makes a lot of sense, as more and more cameras are using short flange mirrorless mounts, as they do have several advantages over a native EF or PL mount. There are a bunch of L mount native lenses from the likes of Leica, Sigma and Panasonic, but you will also be able to adapt a large range of lenses onto it with the right adapter. With the performance of the autofocus, I think a lot of people will choose to use manual focus cine style lenses or adapt to just another type of manual focus lens. 2 new sets of lenses that have L mount versions coming that we love are the Cooke SP3s and the Nissi Athenas, both of which I think would pair very well with this camera. It will also be compatible with Blackmagic zoom and focus demand system, so I'm intrigued to see what lenses will work with that as well. Thanks to the ability to use the full height of the sensor, the Cinema 6K is great for anamorphic acquisition. 3x2 will be great for 1.5 times full frame anamorphics like the Atlas Mercury's, and then you can use more traditional Super 35 2x anamorphics with the 6x5 and 4x3 modes. This is the sensor size used by the different formats. When enabling a D-squeeze in camera, what squeeze the camera uses will depend on what resolution mode you have it set to. This is really limiting and kind of frustrating. You can't just enable any of the available D-squeezes across all the different formats. You're limited based on what format you're in. The Cinema Camera 6K can only record in Blackmagic RAW as its primary recording codec, whereas the Pocket cameras can record in B-RAW or ProRes. So I find it a bit weird that they've removed it in this camera that's surely aimed at being a higher end option to the Pocket cameras. B-RAW is fantastic though. It is a 12-bit codec in which you can shoot in either constant bitrate or constant quality. Constant bitrate allows you to select from 4 compression ratios. It's best to use constant bitrate encoding when you want more predictable file sizes or want to capture with as little compression as possible, which would be 3:1. You also have constant quality. This is for optimized quality with variable bit rates, for which you now have 4 options. Q0 has very little quantization and will give you the highest quality out of the variable bit rates, while Q5 uses more quantization for more efficient encoding and reduced file sizes. Having both fixed and variable bitrate options means you have the ability to record in either great quality or with higher compression to save on storage, all while keeping the flexibility that comes with recording B-RAW. It really is a great format to use, especially in Resolve. Thankfully, as with other Blackmagic cameras, the Cinema 6K comes with a full studio version of Resolve bundled in with it, which is really excellent. The Cinema 6K also allows you to record H.264 1080p 8-bit 420 proxies at the same time as recording B-RAW. These are recorded into an individual proxy folder separate from your B-RAW clips, with your B-RAW sidecar files too. This will save you from having to generate proxies in post, so should make editing with them a little easier if you do want to use them. However, playback and general performance with 6K B-RAW files has been very good from our experience. When Blackmagic announced the Cinema 6K, they also announced that they will be releasing an update for the Ursa broadcast, which reworks the media page to allow you to shoot proxies and then automatically upload them to Blackmagic Cloud using a tethered phone. This looks like a really nice addition, and you can even deliver your proxies or original recordings directly into a Cloud Resolve project. Blackmagic did note that they are aiming to bring that feature to this new 6K, which would be awesome to see, and it would make a lot of sense given this new implementation of proxies. The Cinema Camera 6K uses CF Express Type B as its internal media. It only has a single card slot though, which is a bit of a shame. I would have liked to have seen a dual card slot here like on the previous cameras. I'm not sure why Blackmagic have removed this. CF Express Type B is a great, reliable, fast media type that has dropped in price a good amount over the past couple of years, so I think it's a very smart choice for this camera. But it would have been nice to have seen an SD slot here for the lower data rate formats. You also have the ability to record to external SSDs though via the USB-C 3.1 Gen 1 port on the side of the camera. This could be helpful if you want to edit directly off of an SSD that you've recorded onto, but personally I would prefer to record internally if possible, purely because of the risks that come with having a USB-C SSD sticking out of your camera. But for certain productions, this could work absolutely fine. The Cinema 6K has the same simple single push button autofocus as the previous cameras. It's very limited and stripped back, but could be handy in a pinch. Just don't expect a system from the likes of Canon or Sony. I do feel like this is something that Blackmagic need to work on now though, as more and more people are using and loving autofocus on these modern cameras. Exposing at one of the camera's dual native ISOs will give you a good balance of noise and dynamic range. When using false colour, Blackmagic has kept the same 38.4% IRE for 80% grey, which is represented as green. Purple is black detail loss, blue is near black detail loss, pink is one stop over mid-grey, which is where Caucasian skin should sit, yellow is when you are near white clipping, and it will also be roughly 80% on your zebras, and lastly you have red, which is 95% on zebras, and is where you start clipping your highlights. As with other Blackmagic cameras, I would kick a little bit more light than you'd think you would need, as it does prefer to be overexposed than underexposed, which we saw in our tests earlier. But just remember, as soon as your highlights are clipped, they are gone, so expose wisely. The first Blackmagic Cinema camera was released all the way back in 2011, and I wasn't expecting Blackmagic to use the same body design as the latest generation pockets for this new addition to the Cinema camera line. It's very reminiscent of the 6K G2 and 6K Pro, and if anything, this new Cinema camera is actually smaller than these, thanks to the reduced depth from the change in the lens mount. So it's weird to call it the Cinema camera and not a pocket camera. Other than the lens mount change and the sensor of course, the camera's body itself hasn't seen much change. It uses the same 1500 nits rear LCD on the Pro, can use the optional EVF, has the same button layout, and has the same range of inputs and outputs on the side of the body, including 2 mini XLRs for audio input. It also uses the same MPF battery as the 6K G2 and the 6K Pro. You can also power the camera via the 2-pin on the side, so you can easily power the camera no matter what kind of rig or configuration you want to get it onto. The physical design of these cameras has proven to be a bit of a controversy in the filmmaking space, with some people loving the design and others longing for Blackmagic to redesign it. I personally would love to see Blackmagic rework this camera into a more versatile form factor for video acquisition, and while it's definitely still workable, I find this design challenging to use sometimes in more run and gun scenarios. While the form factor can be good for handheld stuff, as soon as you want to get it onto a shoulder rig or a gimbal or something like that, it becomes a bit challenging to work with. If you want some more advice though on what kind of rigging may be best for you though, and some help designing your perfect rig, get in contact with our experienced technical team today. Details about that are in the description below. The menu that the Cinema Camera 6K uses is pretty much identical to the rest of the Blackmagic current line of cameras. So if you've used any of Blackmagic's previous pocket cameras or modern Ursas, you will feel right at home here. It's incredibly easy and fast to navigate and use, and has a great range of features and tools for shooting and exposing for video acquisition. This includes the ability to ingest LUTs, false color, the ability to use shutter angle, a great punch-in tool, and a decent auto white balance function, though I do wish that you could adjust the size of the square here to be a bit smaller. When navigating through the menu you use the touchscreen, but I would have loved to have seen some kind of change that added a physical button way to do this as well. The Cinema 6K is priced at £2,539, which means it has plenty of competition. There is a bunch of Sony, Panasonic and Blackmagic's own cameras, all of which could be good options to look at here. The big pro that the Cinema 6K has over these other cameras is the sensor and OIPF combination, and then being able to shoot B-RAW and process that in Resolve. And this big combination can result in some great looking imagery. It does lack a lot of the modern features you would expect from a camera at this price now, like image stabilization, autofocus and a compressed recording format though. But Blackmagic are trying to stick to the cinema in the camera's name, by tailoring it to this way of working and making it simple, while also focusing on capturing the best and most flexible image possible. It might not be the fastest footage to turn around compared to other cameras, but the images that you can capture really are incredibly malleable and detailed. So what camera you choose at this price depends on what you want to prioritize. They can all produce fantastic images, but Blackmagic's combination of internally compressed RAW and fantastic resolve workflow is a unique offering at this price. Our beautiful new Central London showroom has just opened as well, which will be a great place to see everything you need before buying anything. Details about this are in the description below. Anyway, let us know what you think of the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 6K, and if you have any further questions in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please give it a like and maybe consider subscribing so you don't miss out on our awesome upcoming content. And thank you so much for watching.